Thanks for joining us, everybody.
You're doing pretty good, buddy. How old are you, Joe? I actually don't. I have no idea how old you are. How old are you?
89.
89. You look freaking incredible. Although
Damn good for 89.
You can't get back into office though at 89. We've got to be done with the
old.
gerontocracy. Hey, I wanted to ask you. I have something that I want to show you today, and then I have something I want to ask you.
And by the way, as Xander's doing that, thank you. Oh, thank you. Xander is a cutie. I'm fine. I'm fine.
So you
on the
are
eye.
a cutie. Thanks,
I'm fine on the fucking eye. But thank you all for joining us. Press those red hearts. Thank you, Kimmy Wynn. This is again part 7, 8, or 9. I don't know what of
I think we're on 8.
A socialist and a libertarian walk into a bar. What's on your mind today, big boy?
I think I don't know. I don't want to be hyperbolic. One of the most dangerous issues for Democrats is I guess it's a mix of like 3 things, but lumped in: homelessness, drug addiction, mental health in cities. I've seen people frustrated with the lack of progress. And I've lived in a lot of these cities, right? I lived in San Francisco. I stayed in LA and San Diego for a little bit. I live in Portland now. So frustrated with the lack of progress from kind of democratically held cities that they start swinging to the other party, and they start getting drawn into a law and order. I think maybe emphasis on the order more than the law piece, but someone who says, fuck it, I'll clean it up. And I think there's been a period of time where I think we've had like a long journey in this country on this topic, right? We had mental health institutions, and then they were being abused, and there's like a civil rights movement around not being able to, it's called a civil commitment, put someone in mental health against their will. But then you had Reagan come along also, who defunded a lot of these mental health hospitals. So then we lost the infrastructure on top. So there was both like a left and right movement that reduced our capacity to institutionalize, not incarcerate necessarily, but institutionalize mentally ill folks. Then we had mass incarceration, where a lot of those people just got pulled into our prison systems, our county jails. I think we acknowledge that's not great. But then there's been, I think, a grace extended in a lot of democratic cities. Okay, like what's the answer there? And as crime is not up. There's a feeling that crime is up, but it's really just disorder. Crime is down big time in most cities. New York had like 3,000 homicides in 1992. It has a little under 300 today, right? So crime and violent crime is down, but disorder is up, and people feel unsafe on these streets and whatnot. And I think it is probably the most dangerous. If Democrats cannot present their version where streets are clean and safe, there's a danger that people throw the baby out with the bathwater, in my opinion, and go, fuck it, I'm rolling with these other guys. And you see it in LA a little bit. You see the success of people you wouldn't think would be successful in LA. I forget the guy who ran against Karen Bass last time. What's that guy's name? This time it was Spencer Pratt, but the guy was really successful against Karen Bass. And it's the type of guy you would not think.
Yeah, the wealthy dude.
Yes.
I'm forgetting.
Type of guy you would not think would do well in LA, and kind of is doing well on disorder. And I was wondering, I thought it was an interesting topic for us. Sorry, this is a long lead in. I thought it was an interesting topic for us to discuss, because I think I'm probably, a lot of the socialists in Portland land libertarian. They're like, you can't touch these guys. They have their own rights. Like there's nothing you can do. I grew up after my father was killed. My mom's brother moved in and helped raise me, and then he ended up addicted to crystal meth and overdosing. And so I've been like really close to someone that was deeply addicted, and believe those people oftentimes cannot pull themselves out of that like an intervention and an institution and infrastructure is necessary. But I just wanted to discuss that topic because I think it's one of the big ones in America, especially in our cities, is the rising homelessness, what fentanyl's done with addiction, how many people are addicted, the type of addiction we're seeing now on the streets, which is kind of a scary addiction, and mental health and homelessness overall. But all right, floor is yours. Really long lead in.
No, Xander, love the lead in. And what's cool about this show is talking about issues like this that people aren't talking about, because we right away want to go to the political. So the political is, you're right, coming from the right like I do, uh, the left's permissiveness or disinterest in street crime and disorder on the streets in urban
Mhm.
areas politically is a field day for the right.
Mhm.
We'll put crime in a separate box. Democrats need to be more serious about street crime. But Xander, you're right. The disorder in our cities, and no longer just our big cities, but our mid-sized cities. It's a real problem and a real political issue. I'm generally right. I'm the libertarian in this conversation. Uh, I think we need to go back to, and it needs to be framed better, but we need to go back to institutionalizing folks
Mhm.
compassionately and effectively and efficiently and lovingly and with an eye toward helping people then move on. I don't think the answer is to let these people out on the streets and to take a shit and do whatever they want out on the streets. I think that's wrong fundamentally, but I also think it'll kill Democrats politically. I've always, Xander, been enamored with the notion of getting back to an effective, compassionate kind of institutionalization of folks like this.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Okay. I wasn't sure where you land. This is why it's so curious. Honestly, Joe, it's like this friendship's so fun for me because I legitimately do not know where you're gonna land when I ask you
By
these
the way, I'm
questions.
going to interrupt my young friend, and whenever I
Yeah.
interrupt him, I'm going to always play the former member of Congress card. I'm allowed to interrupt. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
what's
Go for
so
it.
fucking
Yeah.
cool about this show. Xander and I come into this. We have no idea what we're going to talk about. So
Mhm.
Xander lurched us down a road, a cool road that people don't talk about. And Xander put this in front of me, not knowing at all where the fuck I would land. That's cool.
There is a chart. I saw a chart. I worked on family homelessness a little bit here in
Yeah.
Portland when I first moved here. And there is a chart you see. Family homelessness is actually the exception. That's usually like a working single parent, and that has to do with wages and opportunity and whatnot. But when we were looking at the broad, and the reason we were trying to carve that out is you look at the broader homelessness and mental health and addiction issues. There's a 100% correlation with how many people were in mental hospitals and how many people are homeless. You see they're
Yeah.
negatively correlated charts. And basically the conclusion I ran into is we have like deinstitutionalized people essentially.
Yeah.
And there's a at least the people I know that deal with addiction. Like my wife's family deals with addiction. I was raised by someone who eventually overdosed, and the people who have dealt with it, you know how hard it is for those guys to
Yeah.
pull themselves out of it. And I think something that's happened in this country on the left, it's like very Gail says we've privatized everything to our peril. Yes, that's true in many circumstances. The the thing that's happened on the left is almost our institutions. We've built a distrust for institutions where we're almost distrustful that we can build them because we've been fighting the man for so long. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
We've been fighting for the man for so long. There's almost a disbelief that you don't see in Europe and other places that we can build it right. We can do it right. We can build it right. And it oftentimes makes people in this country, like, my peers on the left actually sound a lot more libertarian to me, and they don't believe that we can do this right.
Well, and Xander, in defense of that attitude, because I hold that attitude, we've fucked up
We fucked up.
government has fucked up dealing with a lot of these issues. There is a natural distrust of government in this country that I think is gorgeous and healthy and been there from the beginning. But
Yeah.
then again, not to get us off track, but the whole notion with the best of intentions, the rise of housing projects in big urban areas back in the mid 1900s. What an idiotic that idea was, with the best of intentions. And we've moved away from that, putting these inner city black and brown and white folk in big, gigantic housing projects.
Mhm.
Stupid idea. But this, Xander, this is a different population. You talk about people with addictions. I'm talking about as well people with just basic mental illnesses.
Mhm.
This is a country fucking afraid to deal with mental illness. Mental illness should be dealt with the way we deal with physical illness. There are people with mental illness in this country who need constant care. Government must play a role in helping to provide that care. And the answer is not to put these people out on our streets.
The when we were diving into the homelessness thing over here, one of the challenges you have is for good reason. This is for very good reason, right? Um, when you make what's called a civil commitment, meaning the police bring someone in and say they're so mentally ill, they cannot be on the street because they don't know,
Yeah.
and they have to pass a very basic test. It's like, I know who I am, I know where I am, these things. Uh, what will end up happening is one of the first things they do is medicate the person. And you talked about mental health or addiction. Oftentimes, these people have what's called dual diagnosis. They got
Yeah.
both, right? They're
Yeah.
mentally ill. They're kind of like treating it through some drug, or they get hooked on some drug because of it. And so, what ends up happening, the first thing they do is they'll medicate them, and then they'll get these people to like a point of sobriety pretty soon, like for call it 48 hours in, right? And we have great mental health medication now. Like psychosis can be dealt with really well.
Yeah.
Um, and they'll be able to answer those questions. And because we built these laws around civil commitments that really lean towards civil rights, right? As soon as you can do that,
Yeah.
you're back out, right? But a person who's not doing well and doesn't have resources immediately falls off that
Yeah.
treatment again, and they don't have the time, the sobriety time to get back on
Hmm.
track in the
Hmm.
and they started developing these drugs recently, which are really interesting, which I think bridge some of this like libertarian and my like social, like I believe in social programs. When I say socialist, I'm not trying to be Stalin. Okay. When I say
Yeah. Yeah.
socialist, by the way, I, I actually had a long conversation with a friend yesterday where we were like, we should stop using that fucking word because that's not actually what we mean. And even if we think that's not what they mean, people, it's what it means to them. You got to stop using that words. Anyways,
Good point.
there's
Good
a
point.
there's a difference between guys like me who do want to build institutions to and the libertarian argument and civil rights argument for them. And they start developing these pills that are slow release of the medicine because you can only give them the medicine when they're in your care. But some of these medicines then release for 60 or 90 or 120 days. So you're getting 4 months of a treated person, even though you're still within the bounds of their of the window where you can treat them. Technically, you only
Yeah.
treat them when they were in your care for that day, but they're
Yeah.
treated for 4 months. And it was a pretty interesting,
Cool.
technological solution to a political gridlock in some ways. Isn't that cool?
Xander, that's very cool. It's so reminiscent of how technology may ultimately solve so many of these problems. But like this notion, Xander, of, and again, find me a better word than institutionalize, but this notion of providing a place and care for people who should not be out on our streets. I think this is something America, any kind of reticence Americans have toward this notion, I think we've got to put away. And it strikes me that this is an issue that there could be bipartisan support for.
Yeah, and yeah, the idea that we should cede our public spaces is a bad idea.
Bad
In
idea.
general, it's a
Bad
bad idea,
idea.
and we need to treat it like we would treat it like it's a crisis if there was, like, other things that were, like, that deeply disrupting our central public spaces. And in this case, it's other human beings who need our help, and it feels to me anyways, it feels cruel. It feels cruel that we are not supporting these people in, coming back to stability. I wanna say one thing, though, 'cause, Joe, you mentioned we have fucked this up so many times. I would challenge you in that and say oftentimes our institutions are working as designed. Like, I don't think our prison system in this country I think our prison system we invented incarceration, by the way, for anyone who's, like, unaware. We didn't invent short-term incarceration. A lot of people would be held for a bit till they got their lashings, or they would have to pay restitution to the person they hurt, or maybe they would be, beheaded, medieval times and
Mhm.
whatnot. But we invented the holding of people in this country, and that got really ramped up post, Civil War. And then
Yeah.
again, with the enfranchisement of Black people because of the 13th Amendment and how you can pull them out of the voting base and then also use them as free labor once again. And so, Tom, you're saying the systems are not working. They're not working by our definition, but I'm saying a lot of the way these things are designed, these things have been designed, are working as intended. If the goal of the prison system was the mass disenfranchisement of Black voters in this country, the system is working. And so that's all I'm saying. I think some of the distrust in our institutions is, and you would probably agree with some of the stuff our military's been doing as well. The distrust in our institutions and their ability to be effective is not um is not accurate in the ways that we describe it anyways, because they have been incredibly effective at disenfranchisement of,
I want to get
certain
to what
populations in this country.
And I want to get to what one of our listeners, Tom Joe, just said. Xander, look, I agree that it's a mix. In many ways, these big government solutions are working as intended. In many ways, though, they're not. And so I think there's a mixed record. It's
Yeah, yeah.
and
100%.
again, to stupidly overgeneralize, there's a massive problem in our society. The left's inclination is to turn toward a big government program. The right's inclination is let the fucking markets solve it.
Mhm.
The answer is always somewhere here in the middle.
Mhm.
Tom Joe just brought up an interesting question, Xander. It's the privatization of our prisons that's really fucked things up. Do you go along with some of that?
It is, but it's different than you think. I think when a lot of
Yeah.
people say I've spent a lot of time in justice reform, and we just had a call on this yesterday on divesting from Geo Group and Core Civic. If you have, by the way, if you have Vanguard as your retirement fund, you are invested in Trump's prison camps. If
Mm.
your retirement fund is held by Vanguard, you're invested in Trump's prison camps. And so ask your employer to switch your retirement fund provider. They own more than 10% of both companies. There's no other retirement fund provider that owns more than 1%. So you can literally go to anyone else and mostly divest from Trump's prison camps.
Before Xander gives a more detailed answer, because this is very much an area of expertise of his, um, my default, my friend, generally, Tom Joad and Xander, is I always love, if possible, a mix of public and private in solving a lot of these problems, acknowledging that there are certain things that only government can best do and certain things that the private sector can better do. But go ahead, Xander.
Yeah. So let me answer the privatization piece.
Yeah,
The privatization piece, the economy of the prison industrial complex, is not mostly private prisons. Private prisons are a small
right.
amount of, I think it's 10%. It's still like
Very small.
great wealth being created by incarcerated individuals, but a lot of it is the commissary. There's like JPay, which is how people do commissary. There's the phone communications networks. There is the work that's being done inside prisons for minimum wage. So it's a much bigger economy than most people. There's the food going in. There's the people who are providing the pillows.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so the economy is like robust. It's not just
yeah,
Geo Core Civic as the private prison operators. There's a lot of all the county jails, all the state prisons. Those are operated by the state, but there's a whole economy taking place inside with a lot of beneficiaries. And then you think about like
yeah,
pre-trial, there's the bail companies, et cetera. So it's big.
yeah.
It's a big industry for sure. On top of the political goals it achieves, and sure, I think Joe, when we talked about the private sector getting engaged and where that relationship is. I think the private sector is oftentimes fantastic at innovation. I think where it gets really dicey is in spaces like healthcare or prison systems, where the goal of a private company is growth, and the societal goal of those things is degrowth. Right? We want, as a society, we should be aiming to have less people incarcerated. We should be building systems in which less people end up incarcerated. We should be building systems in where less people are sick. And so we've got to watch the incentives of the private sector. If the private sector is like, go make a miracle drug that makes people less sick, they're going to do a better job. We should pay for the
Would you
development.
say,
There's go
yeah,
ahead.
and I appreciate that, Sander. And like I look at an industry like education where I want the private sector
More
hit
engaged.
chest deep in education to better educate as best as they can. I think that's a major field that I do want the private sector engaged in. I see a difference between that and, say, incarceration. Oh,
Yes,
should we change the
yeah.
term private for profit? I don't know how you. It is for profit.
I like this. I think this is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, like as we're learning with Trump, a lot of things that are government are for profit, right? Like that reflecting pool is a no bid, $15 million contract to a buddy, right? There's like just because the government's paying for it doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's not for profit. A lot of times, look, education's an interesting one too, right? Like I think that is something where it's just like the capitalism is like a machine that tries to win, and so you've got to point it at the right thing. If you're saying private sector, I want you to help us build curriculum that is way more engaging than a teacher at a chalkboard, and we're going to know that by how well these kids perform, not just on tests, but their interpersonal skills and whatnot. Like you're going to create curriculum or uh, uh, you know IP that is going to walk people through a process. We're going to measure that because you are then creating the type of humans
How
that we
about
want to be creating.
private sector go ahead and open and run schools? And
I,
we, the government, we all pay taxes to contribute to our publicly run schools, our public schools. Go ahead, private sector. If you think you can do things better, we'll allot a certain amount of public money to your private effort to better educate our kids. Would you be open to that?
I think I'm. This is it's funny. We're kind of going back to
Mhm.
another piece of our conversation where it's like I think the left feels so abused by our systems uh, that you're almost scared to like build alternatives in some ways. I think a lot of my trauma
Yeah.
around privatization is really because uh, we haven't given the private sector targets other than growth and profit. And we haven't regulated them well in that sense. I like unleashing the private sector at problems. It just needs to be at problems, not just pure profit. The way you become profitable is solve our problem, not just build the thing that is like mass consumed, right? There's a version of, private school, like there's a school voucher idea, right? Can you explain the
Ooh,
school
which
voucher
I
idea?
adore.
Because
I
yeah,
adore.
there's a lot of people like the school voucher idea. Can you explain the school voucher idea?
Really, really simple. We all agree to give our tax dollars to support public education. School vouchers just say give a percentage of that money that we all give. Like in Chicago, I think we spend $22,000 per child on education. Give half of that directly to the parent and let the parent use that money if they want to opt out of the public system and go to the Catholic school down the street or the charter school in the next block. So give the money, the public money, directly to the parent and let the parent choose in its simplest terms,
And the idea,
public, private, or religious.
the underlying idea behind that is basically then you create more competition within schools. Like there's a
Yeah,
feeling. By the way,
yeah.
I'm not like gang. I'm like interviewing Joe. I don't know. I don't know. Actually, I haven't thought long enough about the school voucher thing, but I want to just make sure I understand the principles. The principles of the school voucher idea is create more competition for schools because the public school system has gotten lazy with its curriculum and format and whatnot, and start putting a little bit of pressure on them and just create an economy where what
Tom Joad. I love Tom Joad, by
what
the way. Everybody
public
should
schools go to
follow
shit.
Tom Joad. Yeah. Well, again, but again, Tom, in my philosophy, competition makes you better. And the consumer is that child. And again, Bill Bennett, Reagan's old education secretary, who probably nobody listening to us right now ever liked, he did have a great line, though. He said, you know what? If you fucking make a bad hamburger in this country, you'll be out of
Tell
business
Joe
in a
you're
week.
pausing. Sorry, my
Got me?
internet got out. Go ahead. I got you. Go, go, go.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Bill Bennett, Reagan's old education secretary, said, you know what? If you made a bad hamburger in this country day after day, you'd be out of business in a month. But if you deliver a bad education in this country, there's no penalty for that. Your consumers are captive. So again, all I want to do is free up the consumers, give them the choice, the competition. And hopefully, Tom Joe, that makes the public schools better because we want to keep these kids, just in broad strokes.
Yeah, and essentially, if you do the school vouchers thing, this is like the interesting thing about this idea to me is that essentially you make every school a public school if you do the school vouchers thing, right? It's like every parent has their voucher; they can pay for it where they want, and so it takes the payment hurdle away from the private schools necessarily.
Mhm.
There's just privately operated schools, but they're essentially all
And it would,
funded to a
to
certain
your
extent.
point, Sander, it would open up private schools to some regulation if they're getting this
Yeah.
money. And a lot of there are religious schools who don't want to participate in this because they don't want the regulation. But that, to back up, that's very different, I think, than the incarceration field, correct?
Yeah, most definitely. I just
Yeah.
I know very little about the voucher program. The voucher program's like it's pretty interesting to me. Honestly, it was like at first pass because it does feel like it levels the playing field. The alternative argument, right, is like the Sweden argument, which is don't allow any private schools, and then the rich people will get invested in improving the public schools. That's like what you see in like the Scandinavia
True,
uh,
true, but
argument is that
exactly
we're
right.
creating these alternative, wealthy island societies that are now not investing in the society for everyone else.
Absolutely true, but that can never happen here. Because if
Mhm.
you abolished all private schools, which you could never do in this country, no matter what, like we all say, there's a certain level of funding that should support anyone's education, but any rich dude or rich family can go above that and pay 100 grand to send their kids to that school in that beautiful town. I never want to take that freedom away, just like I don't want to take the freedom of some billionaire spending $100 million on a home. So we're never going to get rid of wealthy people in this country paying their money for the best damn education they can get. I
I'll
just want
agree.
everyone guaranteed a good education.
There's a big it's funny, like, some of the things I'm landing at are not, like, because of my belief or disbelief, like, in the concept, but there's certain things I agree, there's, like, certain huge cultural hurdles in America that you've gotta work around or, like, not be naive about, and I think there's I don't think we're on the cusp of, like, private schools going by the wayside in the country. Joyce says, "The public schools will be destroyed if you introduce vouchers." Joyce, what's that? And maybe you know this counter argument. What's the counter argument, Joe? Since you seem familiar with the topic, why do people say public schools will be destroyed if the vouchers are?
Because you're taking away their clients, you're taking away their consumers. The counter to that argument is, and we're seeing some of this evidence in the cities and areas where vouchers have been going on for a while, is it does compel the public schools in these areas that are near charter schools and voucher schools to innovate more and to do more to try to keep their kids. And the last thing else, and there is evidence that that does happen. And I guess the counter to that, Xander, is if you if you let the parents decide,
Mhm.
like we live in this country where we do have school choice. If you're rich enough, like I sent my kids to Jesuit high school. Back in the day, that cost me like 7, 8, 9 grand, 10 grand a year to send
Mhm.
my kids to a Jesuit high school. Back then, that was a lot of money. Took me a long time to pay that off. But I had the ability to choose that. if you don't have the income, you don't have choice. I want to give that choice to the parents.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't.
hopefully, go ahead.
No, it doesn't strike me as, like, actually, purely libertarian, and Becky says, "You guys are driving me nuts. The current voucher program is funding wealthy folks and removing fun from unfunded school systems." Becky, I'm not trying to drive you nuts. I'm really asking. This is something I'm learning about. I'm learning Joe's perspective on. Joe's an advocate for the voucher system. I'm not pretending to have the counterbalance. I'm just learning from Joe's
Good.
perspective here on the voucher system, what he likes about it. Obviously my goal
So
all the
funny,
time.
Xander. We start
But
with a topic and we just wind our way
it's
into
fine. It's
so
fine.
it's
That's what we're
awesome.
here for. And
Get back
I
to
like that
this
I'm
though.
learning from
Can you
this.
get back to this?
Yes. What?
This notion of institutionalizing people to care for them off of our streets. Do you agree that we should work our way back to that if we can? This
Yeah,
is your area.
and you're
You
right.
agree with
The
it.
word institutionalize is really challenging
Ugh,
there,
ugh,
right?
ugh.
Like, it's an ick word. I think at least my experience. It's funny, we're talking about 2 things I have a decent amount of experience in. I was raised by someone who had an addiction and died, and then I went
Yeah.
to a failing if you ever saw the movie Dangerous Minds, you know that movie with
Oh
Michelle
yeah.
Pfeiffer?
Oh yeah.
That was based on my high school. That was
Yeah.
the high school I went to. And so
Yeah.
I had a zero point 0.0 GPA in high school. I had to move because gangsters were trying to kill me. I had to move to Connecticut for a semester. I had a rough high school experience. And so I've been both in a really rough public school and also, had this intimate, experience with someone
Yeah.
who raised me, being addicted. And so I I oftentimes, I find myself advocating for expansive social programs, and in this case, I do think it is there like, when we talk about homelessness, there's, like, a triage that's necessary, and so I think we need to have the most careful and, thoughtful triage that skews towards getting people, well and on their feet, that's combined with guarantees. If I have, like, one word that probably is, like, my grounding force politically,
I know what
it's
that word is.
it's guarantees, right? It's like it is guarantees, and so I think that there should be guaranteed housing, period, and that's aided by this, but I think we should at least my experience with people addicted, you really need to wrap your arms around them, and if people don't have a wealthy family, or and sometimes they do have, a family, but they abuse that family's
Yeah.
trust and things have happened
Yeah.
along the way. We need a system that can wrap their arms around them, and care for them, and try to get them to a place where they're healthy again. At the same time, we need to not make the mistakes of the past, the one flew over the cuckoo's nest
Yeah.
mistakes where people can get institutionalized and can't get out. The whole like our prison system, Joe, the whole goal, we're so fucked up around this stuff. The whole goal should get people to a point where they can be on their feet and autonomous as quickly
But
as
Xander,
possible.
Xander,
Yeah, well.
answer this question. This is a
Yeah, yeah.
question out of
Yeah, yeah.
ignorance. Aren't there always going to be people who can't do that, who quite literally, again, need to be institutionalized for life? Won't an open society like us always have people like that?
Yeah, it's funny now you say that. My father was murdered by a mentally ill
Yeah.
person, right?
Yeah.
And John DuPont was the wealthiest guy to ever be convicted of murder. So I don't think this law would have saved me. By the way, I think that
Yeah.
a guy that wealthy would have found a way to, like, get out of that situation. But my father was
Yeah.
murdered by someone who was probably in that situation. I don't know if he would have ever been well, and I think no matter what, the goal should be release. In prisons, the goal should be
Always.
release, and the goal in mental health should be release. Are there people that you never get there? Maybe. John DuPont would drive around my property. It was his property. We all lived there. He owned the Olympic Training Center that we were living on in a tank. I woke up one morning and we had 300 llamas on the property because he said, "I'm the Dalai Lama." And he didn't know what it meant. And so he bought 300 llamas. It was great. I've been dealing with Trump bullshit since I was 0. Right? Like, I've been dealing with this was like a Trump pre-Trump, maniac with too much money, complete narcissist, completely paranoid. And we honestly tried to wrap our arms around him. He came to
Yeah.
all my birthday parties and stuff. We as a community tried to wrap our arms around him and gave him a lot of care. But he had other factors going on too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Endless money, you have endless drug addictions, talking about
Yeah.
the dual
Yeah.
diagnosis thing or whatnot. But this is Yeah, I guess I'm saying I don't differentiate. I think we need to have really important criteria for release, a really good off ramp. That's not just get
Yeah,
out of the
yeah.
hospital, you're done. We're going to do, employment support. You're going to have guaranteed housing. We're going to get you back on your feet. And if they never qualify, some people will never qualify. But I think we're talking about a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the
And
people we're seeing on our street these days.
yes, and oh, by the way, everybody listening to us, that's a socialist and a libertarian who agree word for word on this concept. And again, find the better word than institutionalize. But we all agree that there are folks who should not be out on our streets,
They need support.
period,
They need
who
support.
need support. Now, second point I want to make is this. And I
Here, Joe,
love,
can I
go.
can I
Yeah,
make one
jump.
one? Here's my and I think I was more partial to the more kind of like civil rights oriented argument around this
Yeah.
earlier, and then as I've seen, we've got to be democracy and government is an experiment. That experiment that we went for is like more autonomy, like more skewed towards the civil right argument. These people are it's not working. We are seeing increased homelessness, increased addiction. It's not like personal failure. I don't hold these people accountable. We know that painkillers got a lot of people hooked on drugs.
Yeah.
We know that we're dealing with fentanyl, which is a freaking been a hurricane to the addiction community and is driving overdose and addiction like never before. And so, um,
Yeah.
so all I'm saying is like it's okay to look to be like it was a good idea. I understood the principles of it and plan. How do we get proactive in this fight?
I'm going to close with two quick thoughts. Then I'll give you the final word, you raving
Yeah,
socialist.
go for it.
Um, People have asked me why I so care about school vouchers. It's an issue I've worked on for years. Urban education is an issue I've worked on for years. Here's my problem. Here's why I support school vouchers. I have spent over the years way too much time with inner city Black and brown parents who were forced to send their kids in their neighborhood to a public school where we spent 20 grand per pupil on an education that was a shitty education and was dangerous, when right down on the other side of the street was a Catholic school spending a third of that amount of money per pupil. And I had to tell that inner city Black woman on the south side of Chicago, no, you're not allowed to send your kid to that Catholic school right next door that delivers a better education at half the price. That's why I support school choice. That's wrong. Last thing I'm going to say is, Xander, I love you because your word is guarantee, guarantee. And I love that you embrace that word. I abhor that word, but we get along so well. I don't believe in guaranteed housing. I don't believe in guaranteed 3 meals a day. I don't believe in a guaranteed livable wage, whatever the hell that is. But you and I are each trying to get to the same place, even though we disagree on that word guaranteed. That's why I find these conversations so fucking cool.
Yeah, yeah, man. I'll say like, I said this to you before. I didn't feel like a ethical libertarian was a thing before I met like some more friends. When I was deep in my Brooklyn social justice community, before I broadened my community, I really did think it was just cover. It was cover for rich guys who didn't want
That's
to be
so
taxed.
cool. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that line. That's great.
And so it's been fun for me. This has been like my big kind of walkabout in so many ways. It doesn't mean I'm like agreeing with it, right? Like I'm
No,
not.
no.
I think sometimes I've seen some of the comments that
By,
were,
by the way, Xander,
frustrating. Yeah.
before you and I started talking, I just assumed everybody on the left had no interest in reform, had no interest in looking at public-private partnerships or anything. You've opened my eyes to that. You're Mr. Show me something that might work. I'll look at it.
And gang, let me show you one reason why these friendships are important, because I'm going to show you something Joe and I have been cooking up for a while that Xander, the socialist, could never do, but Joe could. Joe, you haven't seen this yet.
I haven't seen it.
But this is a really important project. Here we go. So I'm just taking people behind the scenes. This is something we've been working on. It's called the Project Inoculation. And so this is an effort to go recruit influencers from across MAGA political spectrum to be able to get the word out. When Trump starts saying the vote's bullshit, I actually won. How do we get the word out to his community so they hear 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 times that day immediately
Yeah.
that, hey, that's not true. I know you're hearing this from Trump, but me, trusted right-wing, thought leader, I can give you the facts and it's not true. And then they see it over and over and over again. And there's enough defections now in the
Yeah.
different Trump camps that we
Yeah.
can go build a network. So this whole thing is really, this thing succeeds within like a 5-hour window, right? Like this whole thing's going to be built over months, but it's going to succeed in a 5-hour window. We're going to build a giant network of influencers that are going to be able to reach out with the
Oh, I'm losing
local
you.
election officials, lifelong Republicans. Eh, Can you hear me?
Yeah, now you're back.
Okay. Here's the
That's pretty
cohorts
cool. I
that
like the way it looks.
we can reach: former military veterans, Maha moms, centrist
Yeah.
Republicans, local law enforcement, evangelical leaders, Rust Belt workers. We need influencers in each of these communities. And that's just an example, right? There's like Second Amendment guys. We need trusted messengers to get the word out about the real election results when Trump inevitably says they're bullshit. Because again,
Stolen election,
he's going to say,
rigged.
look at this fake photo. This is your fake photo. This is what AI thinks you look like.
Oh my
That's how it's
God. That guy does look like he's 89.
That guy's a little older.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Anyway,
Outside
so
of that,
I've got to
Xander,
finish
cool
this.
website. Okay.
This is my homework today is to finish this website. But this is a project, gang. Like this is why I'm building. This is partially why I build friendships across the political spectrum. This is a project I can't run. I can't run. And so in good politics is about finding the places you agree. Joe and I both agree that the real election results should be the ones everyone believes.
Amen.
Right. This is an interesting conversation because there's some friction in it. But in general, like why our friendship began is we're both pro-democracy, right? And so anyway, so that's an awesome project. I can't be the person that's reaching out to the centrist Republicans and saying, trust me, bro. It's got to be someone like Joe that's credible, that's been in that seat and whatnot. And so that's something we're working on getting off the ground.
Good stuff, partner. Good stuff, my friend. And good stuff, everybody who came out to listen to us. These are different conversations. This is not the typical, you tune into a Substack live. Trump sucks. Did you hear what he said? Oh my God, look what Trump did. And it's just two talking heads yelling at each other. This is different. I hope you appreciate it.
All right, gang. Joe, I'll see you next week, brother. Talk soon.
Thanks, partner.